There are two diametrically opposed answers to this same question. Should you practice your match? I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Right here on my channel, I make videos for fellow professional wrestlers at every single stage of their career. And I do this because when I was just breaking into the business, in fact, for the first 3 years I was an active pro, I didn't have a coach to teach me, nor did I have a mentor to guide me. And I really do believe that lack of access to veteran wisdom, veteran knowledge, veteran experience played a significant role, not the only role, but a significant role in my failure to achieve my ultimate career goal. And I don't want to see that same thing happen to anybody else, including you. I want you to be empowered to achieve your dream, and I want nothing to stand in your way. That is why Till We Make It exists. And if you're down with that, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and join the Till We Make It tribe. Subscribe down below. Or if you want to unlock a mountain of pro wrestling knowledge, come join my community over on Patreon. There's a link down below in the descriptus. Just last week, one of my newest patrons requested a video all about working intimate venues and breaking the ice with quiet crowds. And in fact, that's exactly what this Monday's video ended up being about. You can be part of all this too. If you've got a PayPal account or a credit card, jump in, memberships start for as little as $5 a month. Today, I want to dissect the question, should you practice your matches? And there's one interpretation of this I want to get out of the way immediately. One way of looking at the question, should you practice your matches, is to interpret it to mean, should you practice the things you plan to be using regularly in the ring? And I think the answer to that is always yes. You want to practice things like your entrance, your moves and spots and finishers, your character rituals, anything that's going to be a regular feature of your performances in the ring. You need to be practicing those to make sure they are show ready. Now, does this mean that you're never using new material in a live context? No, I think that's also a necessary part of the process. You need to constantly be debuting and refining new material, but that's a minority of the time. That's 5% of what you're going to be putting on stage. The other 95% of what you should be doing in the ring is the material over which you have achieved a degree of mastery. So placing that interpretation of the question aside, I want to get to the real meat of today's video. When I said there are two diametrically opposed answers to this question, the interpretation I was referring to is this. Should you rehearse your matches in advance of performing them? And this is certainly open to much greater debate. There's a camp of people that come out in favor of this. There's a camp of people who are against this. I want to break down both of those trains of thought, and I want to offer you my opinion on the matter as well. When I was breaking in back in the mid-90s, I would often hear grizzled old veterans of the squared circle saying something like this. Pro wrestling isn't meant to be rehearsed. That's for ballerinas. A real pro wrestler can walk to the ring and make it all up on the spot, and it will still look great. Now, I don't doubt that there was an era in wrestling where that rang truer than it rings today. But it's worth considering the fact that for decades, the complete wrestling vocabulary of mechanics, it remained fairly static. Do you know what I mean by that? The available moves to be used in any given match, they remained more or less the same. They rarely changed. A bear hug was as much a finisher for George Hackenschmidt back in 1902 as it was in 1922, and it still was in 1942, and it was in 1962. But when tape trading explodes in the 90s and is then expedited by the mobile revolution of the OOs, the invention and modification of wrestling moves grows exponentially. New moves are being innovated every single day, and many of them are so complex and nuanced or are otherwise so risky that they do need to be practiced or rehearsed to be delivered perfectly. A second valid point often raised by the camp of people who come out against rehearsing matches beforehand is this. To design and rehearse a match in the absence of the audience is to do so without the most essential ingredient of pro wrestling, the live crowd itself. And I do think that there's something very valid there. However, that stance then assumes that the match will be repeated precisely as it was rehearsed, with no consideration given to the audience and without room for improvisation within what has already been rehearsed. And quite frankly, very few matches are rolled out that way. There is always room for improvisation. There is always space in there to give consideration to what the particular tastes or demands of an audience on a certain day might mean. It also neatly overlooks those working pros out there who have refined the skill of knowing what a certain audience wants because they work in front of that same crowd time and time again. Someone who is expert at this, Johnny Gargano. When Johnny worked for me 10 plus years ago or so, I remember being astounded at the precision with which he could anticipate what certain audiences wanted, and he could design and cater exactly to those things. Working pros who possess that skill, they can rehearse in consideration of what the audience might want on the day of the show. And as long as they possess the skill of improvisation, they can adapt to whatever the day brings. There are plenty of pros out there that belong in this camp, the ones that come out against the idea of rehearsing a match beforehand. And I think there are reasonable arguments for that, but not arguments that I agree with. In fact, my take on it is this. If you have the opportunity to rehearse your match before walking it to the ring live in front of the audience, you should take that opportunity. Because any amount of practice or rehearsal always yields a better end product. I am definitely of the camp that believes you should rehearse your matches if you have the chance. And I feel this way for a few reasons. Here's just one. You can find this clip on YouTube right now. It is titled Best Match Finish Ever. I'm the guy in the white pants, wearing the red tights, is Claudio Castagnoli. And this clip has been watched over 1 million times. It feels a little weird saying this, but I'm proud of this clip. I'm proud of this whole match, in fact, and I hate most of my own stuff. I'm astonished at how well this holds up, some 15 or more years since we performed it. And I want you to know, we're not winging it. This isn't being called on the fly. It's not improvisation. The two big movements in this clip were rehearsed more than 100 times each in training to make sure they were ready to be put on stage. And even so, are they perfect? Not exactly. I think I had a better one in me. I was just too blown up to do it. My point is this. I'm not trying to hold that clip up as a paragon of perfect professional wrestling. That's not what I mean. What I am saying is that is something that I am proud of. And those movements, they were only possible because they were rehearsed. More than a few of the most spectacular things I have ever been able to perform in a ring were only possible because of practice, because of rehearsal. That is one reason why I come out in favor of the idea of practicing your match. But there's a second reason as well. And it's because I believe that the rough draft of any work is rarely, if ever, the best draft of the work. And if there's a chance that you could improve upon what you are going to deliver to the paying customers, and you take your work as a professional wrestler seriously, and you regard it with a sense of pride, then I think this whole thing is a no-brainer. Your third draft of a match is almost certainly going to be stronger than the first draft of a match. And that process of doing another iteration, of refining and optimizing for your audience, that is called iterative work. And I am a huge proponent of iterative work. Because I know, for my own sake, my rough draft is never my best draft. But if I put it through the process of honing and refining, optimizing, pulling out the parts that aren't working, appreciating that some things are not yet ready for the stage, what I end up with in my final draft is so much stronger than if I had just walked to the ring and I had winged it. In fact, I believe in iterative work so much. One of the podcasts in season 1 of my series Kayfabe 2.0 is all about the value of iterative work and a presentation I gave to the entire NXT roster a couple years ago. If you want instant access to my complete Kayfabe 2.0 podcast series, excerpts from my books, live class recordings, and tons more, follow the link appearing on screen right now and join us over on Patreon. Or if you want to watch a video all about achieving mastery, well, there's one of those appearing on screen right now as well. Dive into the training process by clicking on it, and off you go.